watching HALENVILLE Live with Fruitcake Tony. Woo!
All right, we made it. Ed, are you there?
I am here.
You look like you're froze. All right, there you are. Good to see you, man. You made it. You made it.
Oh, I made it.
Just in the nick of time. Just in the
Whew.
nick of
That was a close one. I don't know what the heck happened. All of a sudden, the power went out. There we go.
All the power?
Yes, the whole place.
Okay.
There's no storms around here. I don't know what's going on.
Ed sent me a text a moment ago that says lost power.
Just as you started the show, I was like,
and
oh, shit.
Middle intro, I hear
Yep.
a bloop in my ear, and there's Ed. Well, good to see you, man.
All right. I know the electric bill's paid, so.
Good, dude.
Yeah, good to see you too on a Tuesday night, HALENVILLE Live.
Yeah, man. All right. Okay.
It's always a good night when you're talking about Van Halen.
Always, absolutely, always. Yeah, it is Tuesday once again, June 25th, 2024. We're right slam in the middle of summertime. Yeah,
Hot stuff.
Hot heat wave here on the East Coast.
Crazy.
Yeah, and a little bit of a drought too.
But
yeah.
You can't complain though. I mean, come on, it's summer. Everybody knows it gets hot during the summer.
Right. It is my time of year.
Yeah, stop your complaining.
So Ed, we get the luxury of talking about Van Halen and Mammoth WVH around here on Tuesdays. And we get a special treat tonight. We have special guest Martin Popoff, the author of this lovely new book that we're in love with.
Oh, love it. It is pretty too. I mean, the contents are outstanding, but it's the only Van Halen book that I have displayed on my coffee table because it's that nice.
It is lovely. It is lovely.
He went, I mean, they went crazy with the cover, with the embossing and it's beautiful.
Yeah, you knew just looking at, but we got sneak peeks. But if you hadn't, just looking at the cover, you knew you were in for a treat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about all of that. Let's give Michael Anthony a big shout out. Big birthday on the 20th, couple of days ago.
70.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Mikey.
And it's Trev's birthday too over on the OU812 crew.
That's right.
Here on YouTube. So happy birthday, Trev. Right on, bro.
Yeah. He's up in where British Columbia?
Yeah.
Yep.
He is way on the
I'm sure he's enjoying himself at the moment.
Yeah. Don't ask me how old either one of them are. Old as dirt, both. I'll say that, and they'll both agree. All right. And a little later on, we'll dive into probably some nearly impossible Van Halen trivia. So for tonight, we're going to go old school on you. We're going to flash you a Van Halen $1 million goodie.
$1 million.
And we're going to reach into the old prize knapsack and we're going to pull out what we got. All right. How about a 1971 D quarter for
So
your collection?
$1,000,000.25.
That's what's happening. All right. So
Tax
later
free.
on, yeah, score yourself a 71 D quarter.
Yeah,
But those bills are nice. If you don't have one,
they
get
are.
one. Put in a little sleeve and like that. All right. So let's open up the chat and see who's here, Ed.
Sure.
We bring in
Got some early birds.
we do. There's Keith Campbell in
What?
the chat. What's up, Keith? Good to see
What's up,
you,
Keith?
dude. Always good to see you. If you're just joining us, this is HALENVILLE Live. I'm Fruitcake Tony. That's Ed DeBrill. We have special guest Martin Popoff talking Van Halen at 50 tonight. So if you're just joining, say hello in the chat. It is Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Cameron Dean, good to see you.
What's up, Cameron?
Right on. Nice to see you again. There is Lewis.
Lewis.
Ed.
Halenites.
Ronald Aller. What's up? Good to
Hey,
see
Ronald.
you, sir. Nice. And Christopher Live Sober camping out. What's up, dude?
Hey, Christopher.
All
the
right.
big Van Halen Trivia champion.
All right. Yeah. Ed, you know it's staying light out a little late every night now.
Oh, yeah.
It is. So it kind of throws your schedule off. You know, people are just coming in. I know people, 9 o'clock seems late sometimes. This time of year, it seems like 7:30. You know.
Yeah, I mean, the longest day of the year was a couple days ago. So.
Yeah. So everybody, welcome. Thanks for being here. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. We talk Van Halen here every Tuesday, 9 p.m. live. We certainly do.
Yep.
On all types of subject matter. Yes, we do. All righty. So Ed, let's change the view before we bring in Martin. Let's go to another view here. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, the author of this fine book, Van Halen at 50 and Others, world-renowned, legendary rock journalist, Martin Popoff. There he is.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, Martin.
Nice. I get some applause and everything. Very cool.
Good to see you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Okay, let's talk some Van Halen.
Right on.
We can do that.
How are you, sir? I want to tell you, welcome. I'm a fan of your work, and these Van Halen kids are. I'm sure they are happy to see you, and they have your work. I assure you, as well. Thanks for being here, and thank you for this latest book. We love it.
Yeah, they do a really nice job over there. This is I've done almost probably a dozen, 15 books for Voyager. They were Voyager before, then they went out of music books, came back as motor books. Oh, motor books was still going, but they've come back with the music books. And so in this new series, like this whole thing is their idea with this, year milestones, and then you come up with career milestones, 50 of them chronologically. I've done an AC/DC at 50, a Kiss at 50, a Bowie at 75. And then we've done a lot of these panel books for these guys as well. So I've got a Priest one coming out that way where, I gather a bunch of people and we just go through every studio album and I'm like the moderator and it's a Q&A situation. But yeah, they do a nice job. Like you guys say, the pictures are really cool. They do a lot of that themselves. My editor over there, Dennis Pernew, is really good at, he's a big music guy himself, so he's a great curator of what images to put with each of the things. And he writes some captions, I write some captions, but I write all the rest of it. And yeah, it's basically 50 career milestones in a nice coffee table book.
Yes, a lovely one.
Sounds like a great collaboration. I mean,
yeah, I love working on these. My favorite part of the whole job is twofold. Once I get the deal to go, okay, get going, and I know my deadlines, it's like I get to now pick the 50 career highlights, right? And then, they want every studio album in there. And then the other cool thing that I started with the Bowie one, I'm not sure if the other writers of some of these other ones are doing it or not, but I've been doing it with all of them, is then matching a song title to the every chapter in terms of its title. So there's little in jokes that, as Van Halen people would sort of understand, I suppose.
Yeah.
Those, but that's always fun matching those up too.
That was a lovely touch.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of them seemed, they seemed to fit. They seemed quite much so. Each one did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely fit each chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, and picking the milestones, it's like, we get down to, we want to have every studio album in there, and there's a lot of things that are obvious milestones, but you get down to the last few, and then it's a little bit of horse trading back and forth. And sometimes Dennis will say, he'll put his photographer or curator hat on and say, I'm not sure I can get pictures for that. Like, say it's some obscure TV appearance or something, or the Super Bowl or something like that, right? So occasionally we swap one or two out. We do a little bit of trading. It's like, okay, change something for this one. Or something's too similar to another one or too close in time, and sometimes I can combine them. But the other challenge of these is keeping the word count down to what it has to be to fit on either a 2-page or 3-page format and stuff, right? Or 1-page or 2-page. Like the idea, so all of the sentences in the writing is pretty dense and polished, so that there's not a lot of wasted words, right?
Oh, okay.
You can't ramble, that's for sure, in these. So you have kind of an encapsulated, 1,000-word or 500-word or 1,500-word slot. And the challenge, like I say, sometimes I've got everything I want. It's like 5,000 words, and I got to get it down to 1,500. Oh, man, what do I have to cut, sort of thing, right? So. Yeah,
So you want to say a lot, but
exactly.
Sometimes it gets cut down because it's too much.
Because you're thinking about, the fans. The Van Halen fans are pretty knowledgeable, right? As you guys know and are. And you're constantly thinking, oh, the fans are going to think it's a little light. It's like, oh man, I wish I could fit in more, kind of thing. And that's always kind of painful, because you think, any book I do, with the project and the mandate and sort of the mission of it is what it is, as they say, right? It's there's a lot of things this Van Halen 50 book is, and there's a lot of things it isn't, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Martin, you touched on it in the book a little. Did you think anything about the timing of this book and out now?
Oh yeah. All of these are very carefully timed for.
What was your thoughts with this and now, and was it going to be earlier possibly, or?
No, like what it is it's 50 years since 1974, and we kind of said, okay, that's when we say Van Halen started, kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's a little debatable, right? With the name change and member changes, and when are you really Van Halen, and when are you? Is it when you rehearsed? Is it the specific live gig and stuff? With Van Halen, it's a little dodgy, but it's 74 is a good solid. You can't go too wrong with that.
I think you nailed it on the head. I think that's a great year to start.
Yeah.
I mean, so you've done a lot of other publications. I mean, how many are you up to at the moment?
130 books now.
Wow.
130. Wow.
Yeah.
On hard rock and heavy metal.
Pretty much. Jeez. A little bit of prog, a little bit of punk.
Yep. So you must be the foremost expert on that subject. I mean, I would think.
Yeah, in a general sense, one of them, I suppose. But I definitely feel that almost like holding sand in your hands. Like I just feel like the grains of sand slipping away of my grasp of everything as more and more and more bands happen, say in the late '90s into the 2000s, and I get older and I'm still writing about the old stuff and I'm not keeping up. So at a certain point, yeah, the knowledge base takes a steep drop. But yeah, I'm pretty darn good on the '70s and pretty darn good on the '80s. Starts to go down in the '90s. I wouldn't say I'm a '60s expert per se.
Well, you're a Gen Xer / boomer, kind of like us other old guys here.
I'm a young boomer, actually. I'm the second to last year of the boomers, right? So
okay, there you go. Yeah. So you're a Gen Xer. Come on. But anyway,
you're
no, man, I'm a
just
boomer.
a couple of years older than us.
I know.
Yeah.
But so what was your journey as far as heavy metal goes? Did you obviously the birth of heavy metal was in the early '70s, and you must have been a youngster, and you must have discovered it in some way. With most people, they have an older brother or friends that turn them on to. They're like, wow, what is this?
Yeah. My earliest memories are sort of well, actually, oddly, this is funny, but I've interviewed 2,000 rock stars, right?
Wow.
And I think two other ones said what I'm about to say, that their first memories of getting into music was Puff the Magic Dragon. But then after that, I remember the Columbia Record Club, and it was Creedence Clearwater Revival, Steppenwolf, and Three Dog Night, a couple early things. But the first heavy stuff, I was probably in the region of 8 years old, 9 years old, I think I was hearing the likes of Led Zeppelin 4 or 3 or 2 or 1, but I remember getting things like Nazareth Razamanaz in '73, and then getting Kiss as a new release, Rush as a new release. So I would have been 11, right? So definitely '73, I would say, is a solid birth of the crazy, nutty expert. This is my hobby for life kind of thing, right? And then by the time you get to '75, '76, it's all over. Like we're just nuts, right? Cream Magazine and Circus and Hit Parade are a knowing everything kind of thing. So Van Halen was got absolutely as a new release. But yeah, my first things would have been '72, '73. It'd have been Sabbath, Deep Purple, Nazareth. Really rings a bell as an early one. Definitely remember Loud and Proud and Rampant around that time. But yeah, Kiss is a new release, Rush is a new release.
Uriah
in '75, right?
Yeah, Uriah too.
I missed the birth, right? The birth of heavy metal. I wrote a whole book on that called Who Invented Heavy Metal. It's 120,000 words that ends in 1971. The birth of heavy metal that I always say is like you get your bits and pieces, but then it's that Black Sabbath album, February 13th, Friday the 13th, 1970. Another Sabbath album later in '70, Uriah Heep, Very Heavy, Very Humble in '70, and In Rock, Deep Purple in '70. So the birth is '70, right?
Yep.
So I was too young then. I would have only been 7 at that point. So.
Okay.
No Queen in there, Martin?
Got Queen. Yeah, totally. The first album is a new release. That's right. So '73, one of my buddies had that right away. He went on, one of his trips and, grew up in a small town, Trail, BC, British Columbia. So our record buying meccas were Spokane, Washington, or Vancouver, BC, right? Vancouver, BC was 8 hours away. Spokane was a little over 2 hours away. And you had the great hippie shops, the classic Strawberry Jams, Magic Mushroom, Eucalyptus, all these great stores. And that's where we would go and load up on a family trip, try to get 4, 5, 6, 7 albums, up to 10 as we got a little later, sort of thing.
Nice.
But yeah, Queen definitely was right on there right away.
Yeah.
So did you always want to become a journalist?
No, I had no idea what that was, or I knew what it was, but I mean, it never dawned on me to do that. I went through university and stuff, and I was a drummer. We had a bar band just for one brief summer, but I was a drummer all that time as well, and just a crazy music fan. And it never crossed my mind until I did a self-published book of 1942 heavy metal record reviews in 1993, and then the next year, this is after moving to Toronto, Tim Henderson was pulling away, breaking ties with Meat Magazine. Meat Magazine, I think, was over at that point anyways. But that was like a Toronto heavy metal magazine. And he was running the heavy metal department of the flagship HMV store in Toronto, right at Yonge and Dundas, the main intersection. And he's starting his own thing. He called it Timbits to begin with. It was just like an internal newsletter. And then it became Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles. And I got on with him. And instantly 94, 95, starting to interview rock stars, started writing for some American magazines and stuff. That first book got reissued in 97 through a publisher. And then I wrote one or two more and one or two more and one or two more. And then in the year 2000, that's when I went full time. We sold our business that I was part of, and went full time. And you see those lines bisect, right? Where you go, if I spent 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours a day at this rock and roll stuff, I could probably make enough money to make it look like at least a toy job, right? And then hopefully it becomes less of a toy job and a real job later. But yeah, that's when I went full time. And fortunately, I write fairly fast, right? So I didn't know I wrote fast. But I did. And so after interviewing rock stars and stuff, what happened was you would say, yeah, I've talked to those guys a dozen times now, another few more, and I've got enough to start a book on these guys, right? And so that's what happened. My very earliest things were a Blue Oyster Cult book and some Deep Purple books. Those were my first biographies of anybody. But then, yeah, the record review books, and wrote gold mine price guides and stuff, and it was off to the races.
Wow. So BWBK kind of took on the format of Circus, Hit Parade, of Kerrang, that kind of magazine. Yep. And that was around for a while. And the website still up. Are you still involved with the Brave Worlds website as well?
Yeah, we were a print magazine from 94 until 2008 when the financial crisis happened, and a whole bunch of magazines went under right at the same time. Our biggest, even older Canadian magazine called Chart went under. Metal Maniacs and I think Metal Edge went away right at the same month, pretty much.
Wow.
Tim's advertising went from like 35 grand an issue to $2 grand. And it's like, there's no way, Martin, I'm going to make this issue. I mean, this is our last one. So we had Metallica on the cover for the last one. I think it was October 2008. Might have been issue 111, something like that. And yeah, that was it. But the website, Tim's been amazing with the site. He's done such a good job. We were, soon as the internet started, which I peg as 1996, I'm pretty sure Tim had the website already going at that point. So we've been going for almost 30 years now with the website.
Wow.
And it's a juggernaut. It's a high traffic, high revenue juggernaut for Tim. He does an amazing job on it. I don't write a lot for him anymore, but I do. And I would say 25% of any of my periodical writing is for Tim, and then 75% is for Goldmine. I'm writing a lot for the Goldmine site and the print magazine still.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Nice.
You've interviewed a lot of people over the years. So would you say 2000?
Yeah.
Is there any interview that you've done that you was surprised about? You said, "Wow, I didn't know that about that person." I'm very you were shocked about, not in a bad sense.
Yeah, lots of them. I mean, guys turn out to be like super interesting and smart and articulate and have great stories, or really personable and stuff. I think of Bill Ward. I think of Zach Wilde on the bus. Don Dawkin, was always he'd get real personal with you, right? Jolene Turner's great. And speaking of Van Halen, Sammy Hagar's just such a joy to talk to all the time, right? He's just such a bubbly, great personality. he takes charge, and you get a great interview out of Sammy every time. And
just-
he will not pull punches, right? He'll tell you what he wants to say.
Yeah, just wind them up and let them go, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, there's lots and lots of great interviews out there for sure.
That's awesome.
Nice.
I was going to ask you about any of the Van Halen people who you've interviewed.
It's not been that many, and the thing is, the nice thing is, with these different concepts that Voyager has, like the album by album and these at 50 books, and other things I've done, like I've done for them, my 3 favorite books that I've ever done, 2 are for them, where I basically write long, 500-word reviews of every single song by a band. And I did one of those on the Clash and Van Halen, and I did one on the Damned as well, more of a trade paperback thing. But so it's nice to have these concepts come around sometimes that are not a standard biography and are not, predicated on you having interviewed the band 30 times or whatever, right? And so that's great because Van Halen. I mean, I've done a Queen book, I've done a Pink Floyd book. Never talked to anybody from Pink Floyd or Queen before.
Okay. Yeah.
But those are those panel books where, and the neat thing about those is that with Voyager, because they are like these, they're beautiful hardcover, full color throughout books. One of the nice sort of bonuses that they want to do is they want you to go out and try get some famous people to talk to in them, right? So the greatest story is I ended up getting Paul McCartney for the Queen book, and I got to talk to Paul McCartney for 26 minutes about Queen, which was great. So, that's top of the food chain, and then it goes way down from there. I mean, most of the famous rock stars in this world I've never talked to, but he's like the most famous of all of them, so that was cool.
Yeah, wow.
Wow. That's a great notch in the belt right there.
Yeah.
So,
Go
ahead, Tony.
No, I was going to tell Martin that we watch him, and a lot of us and a lot of you in the chat watch Martin here on YouTube regularly with Pete Pardo over on Sea of Tranquility over on their channel. So we watch you regularly, Martin. It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
We've always been a fan of your works, but we get to watch you, and I want to give a shout out to Guitar Hack. You guys do shows with him also.
Yeah, once a month for a long time now. We've got one coming up where we're comparing Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell. It might be tomorrow, actually, I think.
Yeah. We catch all the Hack stuff here on YouTube and enjoy when Hack and you guys huddle up.
Yeah. And we've got our own channel called The Contrarians, right? Which is all, and we've had tons of Van Halen stuff on there, but that's myself and Grant and Marco. We've done 500 videos. So that's our own YouTube channel. And then I've got the audio podcast, which I just passed the 5-year anniversary on. That's called History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. That's straight audio. And they're a half-hour episodes every week. And I haven't missed a week, and it's 200 up to 261 now.
Yeah. Right on.
Wow.
So Martin, we see that your big faves, the Zeppelin, Deep Purple, were a couple of years younger, and we're Kiss kids that graduated into grew into Van Halen kids.
Yeah, I'm not old enough to be Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin to begin with. I mean, I'm a Kiss kid too. Like that was literally, like I say, I was 11 when Kiss came out, but I happened to be there and get that and get the next one and get the next one. And Kiss Alive, a crazy story about that arriving in Trail. But I joined the Kiss Army off of Destroyer, and I was along for all that stuff, of course, as well. But like I say, Van Halen, I remember like it was yesterday hearing that debut album for the first time. So
yeah. Right on. Nice.
It's funny how everybody's journey is different. I went from Elvis to this guy, and then Van Halen after that. For some reason, I heard Van Halen early, in the late 70s on the radio, and maybe some of my friends might have played them. But I didn't really get into them that much until after I started listening to Ozzy and Randy. And then I said, when I heard Eddie, I said, oh, wow, who's this guitarist? And then I went from pretty much Ozzy backwards into rock history.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Everybody's
You
journey's
started
different.
with Elvis, so you're in your late 70s now.
No, well, my mom loved Elvis, so that was my first musical love, was Elvis. So,
Yeah, cool.
but yeah.
Nice. And where
Let
are
me
you
add-
guys set up? Where are you each living?
I'm in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I'm in North Carolina.
All right. Yeah, cool.
Yep. New England.
Yeah.
So Martin, as a drummer, you said you played in a band?
Yep.
What'd you think of Alex's auction?
Yeah, I actually have known those guys for years and years. Jacques over at Backstage Auctions. It's great that they got all that. But yeah, he's doing the sensible thing, right? Not leaving everything to his heirs, to deal with. It's like, get rid of this stuff now and get maximum dollar for it. So it's just smart and mature of him to do that, because too many of our parents and everybody, like, I'm looking now already to try to get rid of things, right? You have to do that. And then, we know kind of he's not going back, and he's telling himself he's not going back, but that's also sensible too, because the hardest job on all of these rockers is on the drummers, right? They're the ones that take the most physical beating out of it. So, yeah, good for him. And now he's got his book coming out. So he's just like, he's almost like orchestrating his late years the perfect way.
Yeah, it does seem that way. We don't hear too much out of the Van Halen camp, and especially since Ed's passing, but I think you're right, Martin. This is, he's got some good people around him. Sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. And what a great legend he is as a drummer. I mean, he's one of those few guys that has his own sound. It's we just did a show on our favorite drum sounds this morning for our channel, The Contrarians, and I had a great drum expert buddy of mine, Peter Jones, on, and he said some really interesting things about Alex, where he said that basically his snare drum and bass drum sound haven't changed a lot over the years, but it's everything else that's changed, right? Toms and cymbals and stuff like that. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way of looking at it. But I've always had this theory that I think the Brown sound, the Van Halen Brown sound, I like to include Alex in that. I mean, it's Alex and Eddie together. What they do, they create that, because I don't think the bass sounds particularly unique, and vocals is vocals, but Eddie and Alex together, there's just something about what they do. And I picked out of all the Van Halen albums for this favorite drum sounds show, I picked 5150, which is definitely not my favorite Van Halen album, but I think it's just got this radical, strange, almost amusing, obscure sound to put on a big corporate album. It just sounds so unique. Like nobody else was recording like that. That brightness and that attack on the bass drum and stuff, right? And then I also said on the show, which I find interesting is the idea that I think the very, very best Van Halen ever sounded was Up for Breakfast and It's About Time, where the absolute crazy guitar and drums crunch that you get on those songs is just out of this world.
Really. I like that, Martin.
Wow. That came out of left field for me. Up for Breakfast, and It's About Time. Wow,
I'm with you.
Yeah,
the lyrics.
I drew the parallel that it's odd that I think the greatest, the most fulfilled Led Zeppelin-esque sound that Led Zeppelin ever got are also on bonus tracks or like demos, basically, or unused tracks from In Through the Outdoor that they stuck on Coda, Ozone Baby and Darlene, especially Ozone Baby. And I think those two songs, especially Ozone Baby might be my favorite John Bonham drum sound of all time, and yet it's on Coda, which is crazy, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. Sometimes the obscure ones are the diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you spoke of the brown sound with the drum. I've heard people go as far as say it as the brown sound is the snare drum tone.
Okay.
You know, um, a lot did change in those kits. You know, it got kind of big there in the late '80s, but a lot of things kind of did. But
Yeah, that's a great point, Tony. It's like, I swear to God, I think the most beautiful, beautiful drum kits ever made for anybody are Alex's. I think they're better than Neil Peart's. You know, I just laugh out loud when I see all the great designs on Alex's kits. They're just the best.
yeah, yeah.
That's true.
I am curious to see if any of us know, ended up with those drum kits that went in auction.
Wow.
Yeah,
Big money.
yeah.
I was telling Tony a couple weeks ago that I think it would be nice if maybe one famous drummer from a rock band would have bought a kit and use it on tour. As
Yeah.
you know, wouldn't that be great?
That's a great idea. And yeah, that would be
Portnoy or somebody. I mean, as homage to Alex, you know, kind of like a tribute to him. Use his drum kit on a tour.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. Martin, let's remind everybody where they can get this lovely book. Now, we also love your other Van Halen that's on the shelf, as well as that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But this right here, you can grab this at the Van Halen store. And do they need a link? No, because the Van Halen store is up on their browser anyway.
Yeah. And I've got it at martinpopoff.com as well. Like everything that I had that is in print, I have in my office in Toronto, and I sign them and send them out from here. So Unchained that's the only place you can get Unchained. And then the Van Halen visual biography, I think you can get soft covers of that at the Van Halen store, and the hard covers might be all gone now. I think I have one left. But yeah, it's basically martinpopoff.com has PayPal buttons, you know, for America, international, Canada, and like I say, I sign them all and send them out from here. So
yeah, I see your works in off-market places too often. Yeah,
cool.
I do.
What I like about the book is it's a great book for beginner Van Halen fans, and they're out there. I mean, I've seen a lot of youngsters who picking up the guitar and discovering Van Halen, and this is a great book for them as well as us old Halen heads. But just all the greatest 50 events and chronologically, and then I love the centerfold, the pull out timeline.
Hold that up, Ed. I love that too. That is,
you got the timeline right here. Yeah. I don't want to tear my nice copy here, but it opens up somehow here. I'm sorry, but I mean, look at this. I mean, it got all the timeline of all the albums and different points of interest in Van Halen history, and a lot of great photographs and that they put together here from. And you know what I also like? I like the little tidbit like collector, passes and things like that.
And for all my books, my favorite thing to put in them is the ads, like the print ads from the color ones or the black.
Yeah, you got.
I have a huge collection of the black and white ads from Sounds and Melody Maker and Record Mirror from the UK, like the big, weekly newspapers.
That's cool.
Stuff, right? And there have been some doozies in Van Halen over the years. I don't know if the one's in there with the, the one with the skeleton hand holding up the logo. I hope that's in there. I can't even remember.
I don't know if I've seen that. A lot of backstage passes.
Seems like I want to say it is. It seems
Yeah, you
like
know,
I saw
the
It
other
might-
one I really like is the two you know, the woman and her daughter sitting in the water with the lifesaver, the Women and Children First ad. That's always that's a neat one as well. But yeah, I'm looking through it now. There's a lot of backstage passes in here, which is good to see. They did put a lot of that in it.
Hide your sheep, diver down, temperature up ad.
Yeah, yeah.
Right there.
Probably didn't want to put
Diver down days.
Probably why we don't have too much of that, but yeah.
Martin, have you got any response from the Van Halen camp on this latest book of them liking it?
Oh God, no, that never happens almost with anybody. I mean, I rarely talk to anybody about, you know, the books. Even, you know, it's funny, Tony, like even I'll get in interviews with bands, right? And I think they're uncomfortable bringing it up that they know I wrote a book on them, and I'm uncomfortable bringing it up, and we just go do the interview, and neither of us brings it up, right?
Oh,
the
okay.
time a recent one that was funny was well, actually, this was weird. So I just interviewed Ian Gillan and Roger Glover for the new Deep Purple album, and Roger at the end of it says, "I've got shelves heaving with your books," and then he goes, "People think I need them, so people give Roger Glover my books. It's really weird." So I didn't quite know what to make of that, but I remember talking to Klaus Meine for the last Scorpions album. And I asked him some question, you know, and he goes, "Oh boy, yeah, that's a tough one. But you should know, you wrote the book on us, right?" So that was pretty funny. So it's funny sometimes when I'm researching stuff, and some, you know, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page on something, and I see a good quote and go, "Oh, that's an interesting way of looking at at that." And then it says, "Said Martin Popoff," and this, and I go, "God, it was already me last time." So,
that is funny. They use one of your quotes.
yeah. Oh yeah. Somehow I've ended up all over Wikipedia, like just hundreds and hundreds of places in Wikipedia. I don't know who does that. It's a mystery to me how Wikipedia. But I don't know how I got in it. So.
Well, you're all over the place. I mean, geez, your publications and internet and all the stuff that you're doing now, you know, websites, and you're everywhere.
Variety, right? I mean, I try not to make any of the internet stuff or the podcast stuff be too much homework, right? It's hopefully just stuff I know, but I'm starting to get tired of the sound of my own voice and hearing the same stories over and over again. It's like, yeah, it's going to be time to hang it up soon, or do some more research, right? Talk about some things I do. But
Yeah.
you know, when you're doing that, then it's like you're looking at your notes and stuff, and it's not as natural, right? If you could just blast stuff off the top of your head, it certainly sounds better, right?
Right. Let me ask you this, Martin. You've seen music evolve since the 70s as we have since childhood. Where is rock music and the type of rock music that we all like? Where is it going in the future? We see these newer bands out there, you know, Mammoth WVH being one of them. Where is rock music going as we age?
You know, the funniest thing I find, it just like breaks me up to no end, is that I don't know how many times throughout the decades I've said, you can't make anything heavier than this. How do you make something heavier, right? You can't be faster. You can't be growlier. It can't be recorded different. You can't make anything heavier than this, right? Today's heavy metal is so crazy heavy, right? Like the postmodern deathcore, whatever they want to call it. You know, you flip through TikTok, and it's like there's mainstream people listening to this stuff, right? And it is so crazy heavy and progressive, right? That's the other crazy thing, is that I think these young minds of these kids can process some really complicated music that, you know, it's just gotten so insane. So you know, I never say never, but I mean, I definitely, you know, I remember thinking you couldn't get heavier than Pantera. You couldn't get heavier than Metallica 10 years before that. You couldn't get heavier than black metal, right? and then it's deathcore and blackened deathcore and gent and all of a sudden. But where metal is at now is insane. But more on a business point of view, it's like there are just so many bands that everybody's got a tiny audience, right? And obviously without trucks driving around, pallets of plastic and paper all over the place, the business itself is just naturally smaller, right? With it all being, streaming. It's basically streaming and go see the band live. That's really what it is. Everything else is a toy, vinyl and a CD and a shirt. It's all small stuff, right? Although merch can be a good thing, but yeah, there's every kind of rock music out there. There's bands of 18-year-olds trying to be Guns N' Roses. There's bands trying to be Metallica. There's bands doing this stuff I just talked about. Everything's around. So there's going to always be plenty of classic rock, although people do say also that, what has endured on streaming and keeps getting the huge numbers is the very top tier of classic rock. And I've actually talked to some Van Halen experts who have said things like, you know what, Martin, Van Halen is actually becoming one of those slightly forgotten bands. So on some level, they're arguing that Van Halen has fallen out of that. They're not getting the Pink Floyd and Queen and even Guns N' Roses and Metallica numbers, right? So, and I feel a little bit that way about Aerosmith, I think, as well. So, you think the basket of bands that are regularly paid attention to is 50, right? But it's fallen down. It's fallen, it happened with playlists in the 60s and stuff. That's cut down to 10 bands, right? And the 70s eventually will be cut down to 10 bands. And I think we're in that process right now.
So the cream of the crop, the cream will rise, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah. I got a question for you, Martin. Were you involved? Did you contribute to the breakdown of the heavy metal family tree? Where they listed all the bands in different categories and so forth.
The very first job I ever did for Banger Films, I did that tree completely. And then I got on and we did, what did we do first? Did we do all the Metal Evolution episodes or the Rush movie around that time? So I did those, and then I was around for the ZZ Top movie, the Alice Cooper movie a little bit, the Triumph movie a little bit. But mostly my main jobs, and we had another series that we started there that only lasted 4 episodes. But my biggest jobs over there were the Rush movie and Metal Evolution. I was there full time in the office, for 2 or 3 years on those things.
Wow. What about the decline of Western civilization?
No, I wasn't part of that because
No.
Banger Films, all of the stuff I just mentioned is actually right here in Toronto. Decline of Western Civilization, A, was before my time, and B, it's out of Los Angeles, right?
Oh, okay. So you've been involved. You are part of the fabric of heavy metal. My God.
It's dad rock now. It's hard rock. It's prog. It's punk. It's not heavy metal anymore. I mean, heavy metal has evolved so far past me. I basically haven't really been paying. It's pathetic how little attention I've been paying since probably 2000, right? Except, I do realize that there are dozens and dozens of bands that I followed right through and stayed an expert on. But when it comes to young bands, new bands, I just don't know anything.
Yeah.
What do you consider new bands? Like from 2000 on?
Well, that's funny. Yeah, it's literally, it's like even if you started in 1995, you're a new band as far as I'm concerned.
Like Godsmack?
Funny TikTok the other day. Those things are all.
It makes you feel so out of touch, all these new hard rock bands, but there are an awful lot of the very hard ones out there.
They had this great TikTok, one of those little reaction things, and this young girl was on there saying, and what if you had a phone that stayed in the house that everybody could use? And this guy comes on and goes, "Oh my God, how old am I?" She's describing a landline. That's a landline.
That is funny. Wow. So do you actually think that like bands like Godsmack or I still consider them new.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works out.
Well, we followed them a little bit in Brave Words and Blade Knuckles, and I interviewed Sully, super nice guy. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and someone else from the band. But yeah, they're kind of newish, yeah. But so in that Brave Words period, what I do pride myself on is we did keep up with, I for a while there knew a fair bit about black metal and all the sort of melodic Swedish death metal and all those kinds of bands and a lot of the prog metal bands. So yeah, sometimes when I look back and I go, I can't believe I've interviewed Cradle of Filth like 5 times, right? It just boggles my mind because I haven't kept up, right? I eventually just dropped off with all that sort of stuff. But like I say, I mean, all the bands that I grew up with and loved from the 70s and 80s, I've stayed up with all their new stuff. So you could argue that, do you listen to any new music? It's like I listen to tons of new music, but it happens to be the 20th album by a band who started in the 70s or whatever, right? So, does that qualify as new music? And we even have this debate all the time. Like we had a whole contrarian show on this, which was really cool about this debate about new music. But, I find certainly as legitimate is like, go back and listen to bands from your era that had 10 albums out in the 80s and 90s that you paid no attention to. I mean, that's new music to you. It just happens to be old. So there's enough old music that's completely new music that just shows you, being in the game and vital and investigating things, right? But yeah, people say things to me. Sometimes, I kind of joke around and say, they'll send me something and say, you got to hear this new band, man. This is their second album. They just came out. Yeah, I think you'll really like it. It's like I say to them, you know what? There's 29 Peter Hamill albums that like if someone said, you got a desert island, you got one artist, I'll take 29 Peter Hamill albums, right? I barely know the 8 Peter Hamill albums that I own already, and I just totally love the guy and respect him. It's like there is so much old stuff that I would, that has a backstory and a history and came from my era, and the guy's older than me, and that I would be more into than anybody trying to tell me about life who's like 21 years old, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Martin, let me ask you this. We watch you on YouTube and you guys rank a lot of stuff, and I wanted to ask you this anyway. Ed, I'll ask you too, and we'll go around the horn just for shits and giggles, just because I like you guys. What's the single greatest album, Martin, of all time? Oh, man. One album. The greatest album.
I usually go with Black Sabbath Sabotage for that. It's just so creative and heavy and brutally heavily recorded. It's just nutty. It's foreign. It's druggy. It's psychedelic, but it's so heavy metal. Like I say, it's just incredibly creative. And I like the fact that you don't have to cheat and go with a double, because sometimes I will pick Physical Graffiti. Sometimes I'll pick Queen 1, but I love the fact that Sabotage is like the same year as Physical Graffiti. It's a single album, and I think just value for your money throughout Black Sabbath Sabotage. That's my pick.
Right on. Ed, he's talking your language, man. Buddy.
Boy, you put me on the spot here.
One record. Spit it out.
My favorite song of all time is Kashmir, but I got to say that my favorite album of all time is Boston.
Wow. Good one.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a hard rock and heavy metal guy, but I love Boston. I love Brad Delp's vocals and what Tom Schultz did in the basement of his little apartment there was amazing. And I got to go with Boston.
Boston.
Yeah.
All right, Tony, let's hear it.
Yeah. All right. There's a lot of great debut albums of all time. we're not. But I would say from top to bottom, the single, and my taste in music varies a little, but the single most greatest album of all time, top to bottom, first song to last song, for me has to be Who's Next.
Wow. For you. You're an old soul.
So
I think that's funny that we're on a show called HALENVILLE Live and nobody
know.
mentioned Van Halen.
No,
But they're up there for me.
My list of the greatest debuts of all time, and I can't remember where I put Van Halen. It would have been top 3. Boston would have been top 5, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Van Halen, Montrose would have been high on that list. Sex Pistols, but they only made one album. But yeah, obviously the Van Halen album. The funny thing about the Van Halen album, when we first heard it, my buddy, myself, Forrest Toop, and myself, I think he bought it, and we brought it home to his house, and the big Yamaha 3020, 160 watts per channel, Bose 901s in the parents' carpeted living room, and we put it on. And what I remember about that album is that it was clearly going to go places, and it was exciting and had a lot of stuff for everybody, right? But I remember thinking, Jamie's crying, little light, running with the devil, little light, feel your love tonight. That sounds like 70s barroom rock by Moxie or Triumph, right? And Little Dreamer, exactly the same thing, right? It's got this guitar solo. It's crazy, but neither of us are guitarists. It's kind of there. It's got this really good quality heavy metal Kinks cover, and it had Ice Cream Man. But I remember thinking this was the only American band that we know who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Judas Priest and Scorpions and the other European bands when it came to blistering, amazing heavy metal. And that was really isolated to like 4 songs, right? I'm the One, On Fire, Atomic Punk, Ain't Talking About Love. Is that all of them? But that was a really cool thing about Van Halen. And that felt a little bit like what Queen did. Remember when Queen, it's like, we're not a heavy metal band, but hold my beer. If you want to hear heavy metal, we'll give you a little heavy metal. It'll be heavier than every other band you know, right? Stone Cold Crazy, Modern Times Rock and Roll, the song Sheer Heart Attack, other heavy things here and there, White Man, Prophet Song, whatever, right? So that was funny about Queen, that they could do that. But Van Halen was kind of doing that as well. But, and we just did a show. I went on Lair of the Alchemist, and we did the heaviest albums of the 70s. And the funny thing is, America really wasn't that heavy. They don't have that many great heavy metal albums in the 70s, right? And oddly enough, that Van Halen album is one of the, probably in my books, it's one of the top 6 or 7 heaviest albums of the entire 1970s out of America.
Wow.
And
yeah.
There's the odd one out of the UK, basically, that is heavier. But in America, Van Halen 1. I even had Van Halen 2 on my list. I think of 10 albums, I had Van Halen 1 and Van Halen 2 on the list of the heaviest albums of the 70s.
Mm.
Huh. Interesting.
Those around 1980, Martin. Did you notice it there for a while in the early 80s? It seemed like when bands put images of themselves, real images, the albums didn't do as well. But when they had animated stuff on their records, like for instance, Iron Maiden stuff. Okay, let's see.
With Eddie, yeah.
Fair Warning, a lot of the Kiss stuff, Rock and Roll Over, Love Gun, didn't.
I never really thought about that. I do know, and that whole narrative of heavy metal illustration starting with Eddie, and it was a big deal. I've never really put the two together like you just did, Tony, with did it sell better if you used illustration versus a shot of the band? I've never really thought about that, but that was kind of the start, where you've got, you know, Judas Priest, British Steel, and you know, Metallica. Eventually, you got Ride the Lightning. Well, all of them actually. Ride the Lightning.
Right. A lot of them did well. Kiss
Yeah.
started with the three of themselves, and then when they started, you know, Rock and Roll Over and all the animated stuff did, I mean, of course, Alive did well, but you know, it just seemed, and it was the norm. And a lot of bands, you know, I was in middle school at the time in the record stores looking at these album covers. So
you look at
that played a lot into it. You
yeah,
know?
you sitting there going through the records, and all of a sudden you see Molly Hatchet. You're like, what the hell is this?
Well, I
Look
mean,
at this guy. And it's got to be good.
If it's 1981 or 82 and you don't know who Van Halen is,
Yeah,
and you see Women and Children First versus Fair Warning,
yeah, that's true.
you know, and you're 11.
I don't know. Like I said, I've never thought about it, but I don't know if. I mean, do you think there was less band photography on the cover in the 80s than there was in the 70s? I've never really thought about it. To me, it seems pretty even. So I'm not sure.
It does, but it just seemed like the bands like Kansas, they were a lot of animated album covers there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know.
It's true.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, some graphics that, I mean, even a band in the 80s like Asia, you look at their album covers.
Yeah.
Pink Floyd,
Ed said.
obviously. Boston, yeah, with the spaceship guitar. I mean, yeah. It looked pretty badass. And as a youngster, you were more likely to buy that album just on the visual.
Yeah.
And hope that it sounded good.
Martin, what was your take in Van Halen history about all of their covers?
Oh, I think Van Halen has one of the worst track records for album covers. I often say Foreigner and Def Leppard are up there. AC/DC is up there. AC/DC might be my favorite band in the world, but I think their covers aren't that great. But yeah, the Van Halen covers are.
Well, what I meant was cover songs. Van Halen did a lot of cover songs throughout.
I think they did a great job with that because they really Van Halenized them. They put a lot of energy into them, and sometimes there are interesting arrangements. And I think all of them have you know, quite a lot of value to them. They could be obscure at times. You know, the one, you know, kind of going through them in my head, I think the one that I always found a bit of a disappointment is Where Have All the Good Times Gone? And You're No Good. I think both of those lack imagination, lack energy. But I think Dancing in the Street was really good. Pretty Woman was really good. Ice Cream Man was good. So I think they generally did a pretty darn good job with covers. Because you definitely, you would get the Brown sound, and you would get all that personality that you hear in and Alex and Mikey and Dave or Sammy or whatever, right? Although Sammy, we don't got covers with Sammy, right? Except on the live album, we get the Who song.
Yeah.
Well, I guess opinions vary with you know, but like those Kiss songs, I can't imagine them doing cover songs. You might not call them great songs, but and I'm sure Eddie, I'm sure he was the same way. He wanted his own stuff out there and not all these covers. But I think a lot of us Van Halen fans do. There is something a little, you know, we are not particularly fond of the covers, the Dancing in the Street, Pretty Woman, etc.
Well, I don't want anybody to do covers. I mean, I would always rather have an original, right? They didn't obviously Dive Her Down, they went overboard, but they didn't particularly go overboard, you know, throughout the whole career. But yeah, I don't want to hear them do covers, but if they did, it was, Pretty Woman was pretty rocked up and pretty cool. That was all right.
Yeah.
Do you think Ray Davies was pleased with you really got me, or was he just happy to receive a royalty check?
Yeah, I'm sure he was happy to get the royalty check. And I don't know how you could complain about that, because I remember, us as kids also we didn't want covers. But that basically sounded like a good, solid meat and potatoes heavy metal song on that album. Like it actually was one of the heavier songs on Van Halen 1, actually.
Yeah, he Van Halenized it, so to speak. Eddie did.
Not so much on that. To me, that album, I've always said that album is the most conservative, sober, ambitious, hard worked on, polished album that they ever did. I often say that starting with Van Halen 2, they became The Who. I mean, they basically became this explosive bunch of personalities, chaos, lightning in a bottle, chemistry. But on the first album, they just sound like a really professional band trying super, super, super hard. So I don't think there's a lot of personality, attributed to the band. Only Eddie and Dave. Eddie and Dave have personality there, but Alex sounds like a normal drummer on the first album, I think. And I think You Really Got Me sounds like just like any band would do it. There's really not a lot to it. I mean, you do get the backing vocals, and that's kind of cool and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's funny. It's like I think the two most professional albums that band ever did were Van Halen 1 and For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, and everything else is basically Who's Next.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. Wow.
For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. So, what Van Halen album do you like the most, Martin? What's your favorite?
Well, that's a funny thing. Like Van Halen fans are always complaining about stuff, right? And but the funny thing about Van Halen, and I've said this to Pete, that it applies to a few different bands like UFO, I think, as well. Thin Lizzy to some extent too. You ask a whole bunch of Van Halen fans your favorite Van Halen album, and they'll have a good 3 or 4 or 5 different albums. So there's no clear winner in the Van Halen catalog. For me, I've often gone with Fair Warning. But every time, the reason everybody likes Fair Warning is because it's got the 2 best Van Halen songs on it, kind of thing, right? I'm not saying they're the best, but you know what I'm talking about, right? But that's a funny thing about Fair Warning. But for me, I'm shocked and surprised that after so many years of putting it down, 1984 is my favorite Van Halen album.
Mine too.
Covers. Everything's pretty darn good on it. I'm not a huge Panama fan, and I'm not a huge Hot for Teacher fan, but everything else I totally love on it. Girl Gone Bad is in my top 5. House of Pain's amazing. Drop Dead Legs is amazing. Jump is amazing. I'll Wait I really like. But generally speaking, they're all short, so you complain about them for that, of course. But generally speaking, and I love the production. The production of that album is really cool. Very Brown soundy. But yeah, oddly, that's how about you guys?
1984 for me.
I lean toward 1984 as well. The first concert I ever saw was Van Halen 1984 tour, so brings back great memories. Yeah. And musically, like you said, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs. I mean, I played that thing over and over again. I think I actually wore out my album. I had a cassette as well, and then finally when the CD came out, I got that. But yeah, 1984. Yeah. And believe it or not, a close second for me is Balance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love Balance. Absolutely. So Martin, were you, when Dave left the band, long story short, were you liking the new version of Van Halen in '86 at the time?
I remember at the time, so I would have been in university doing my MBA at McMaster in Hamilton. That story to me was almost like, it's just another band that's kind of not as great as all these other bands that I'm into at this point. Slayer, Metallica, college rock, like REM And who else? I want to say Replacements, Husker Du, Soul Asylum, but that might be a little too early for them. But yeah, I mean, I was just into. There was so much great music around, and Van Halen wasn't making the greatest music, basically, of all of them. Rush had faded for me a little bit as well by that point. But boy, what would have been my favorite bands around then? Yeah, honestly, yeah, the first Savatage album. Big Aussie fan around that point. Still into my Scorpions and yeah, but yeah, even those bands are fading. I would say the greatest albums around that time, yeah, were Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, right?
Nice.
Those were really the best, and Anthrax around that time was amazing. It's not that I'm just walking this through my head right now. It's not like I was a crazy raving thrash maniac or anything. But when I think of what the greatest albums were around that time, I think of stuff like that, But I was into college rock too, right? 5440 and The Church and REM and I don't know, the Smiths maybe a little bit. I'm not a massive Smiths fan, but yeah, a lot of that stuff as well. But yeah, we had, I loved the hair metal stuff I was totally into at that time. I liked Rat and Quiet Riot and Twisted Sister at that point as well. So, that story, it's like I wasn't crazy about 5150, and I sure as heck wasn't crazy about Eat 'Em and Smile either. So,
were you a Hagar fan at all prior?
oh yeah, I was a Hagar fan since I was like, the Montrose album. I didn't get that as a new release, but I think I knew about it a couple years later, and I had bought every Sammy Hagar solo album as a new release since 9 on a 10 scale and Into Red and Musical Chairs and Street Machine and all that stuff, right?
Wow.
Danger Zone, or whatever it's called. Is it called Danger Zone? Yeah, all that stuff. The funny thing about Sammy, his brain wasn't wired like a metalhead, though. There'd be heavy stuff on them, so we were always like, this stuff's okay, but it's just not heavy enough for us, right? Sammy was just in my life since I was 11, basically 11, 12 years old.
So, Ed, we talked about the greatest albums, me and Martin, a moment ago, and an album nobody even mentioned, AC/DC Back in Black. I leaned on that heavily at the time.
Yeah.
Wore it out.
Oh, yeah.
That is up there.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be my favorite band. That's not going to be my favorite AC/DC album, though. It would be fourth for me. I go Highway to Hell, Power Age, Flick of the Switch, Back in Black.
Oh, nice. I go Back in Black, Highway to Hell, Flick of the Switch, Power Age.
For those about the rock.
No. To me, for those about to rock, they were great songs, but it just wasn't as good as the previous to me. And I went and saw them and wore that album out too. But a lot of those songs, for some reason, sound similar, Martin.
I think my top AC/DC, same as yours, Tony. Same thing. Same lineup. Although nobody gives Razor's Edge love.
I'd be pretty high for me. I'd put that higher than Blow Up Your Video. I'd put it. Fly on the Wall would be pretty close. I'd put it higher than anything after that as well. I think I'd even put it higher than For Those About to Rock. So yeah, that was a big comeback for them. It was a big hit album, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of us got after, kids my age, we got into AC/DC and around 80 and then went backwards with Highway to Hell and all the previous stuff.
Yeah,
that's kind of what happened with Metallica and the Black Album. You're almost embarrassed to admit that all these years later, but that's what happened. I mean, I loved my hard rock, but I didn't like it quite that hard. very aware of them at the time, just not to my liking until the Black Album, and then you go backwards.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's see. So, Martin, would you join us? All these kids in the chat. Let's let them stand up at our little seventh inning stretch and let them go to the fridge. Let's play some nearly impossible Van Halen trivia. So, tonight's trivia question comes directly from this, and you can get this at martinpopoff.com or the Van Halen store. It got to my doorstep in about 3 days, Martin.
Nice.
And it is lovely. I'm sure a lot of you have this, but if you do not, it is easily obtainable, and it will be, trust me when I tell you, one of the loveliest that you own. Absolutely, it will. All right. So this question, for those of you who don't know, well, we ask this question every week. It's nearly impossible. It's pretty difficult, but gettable. We're giving away a $1 million Van Halen note. Looks kind of handsome like that, and a actual 71D 1971D quarter for your collection. For your Frankie. Yeah, you can drill a couple of 3 holes in it and relic it up and then put it in your collection. All right, so if you are the winner for the trivia game tonight, there's a trivia winner's email down in the description that you'll find. Email me your name and address. I will mail this out in the morning to you. Thanks for playing. The first correct answer over there in the chat that we see will be the winner. All right, kids. So get ready for this. This is coming your way. Good luck. The first correct answer that we see. I have to write these, Martin, harder and harder each week because these Van Halen kids are so smart. But after about 6 weeks, I write it so hard that nobody gets it. So I think we're on about week 4 right now, Ed. I hadn't won in a couple weeks or so. Anyway, here we go. Good luck, everyone. First correct that we see. So in 1976, after Gene Simmons brought Van Halen to New York to record a demo and shop the band to Aucoin management, Gene suggested that they change their name to what?
Not Joe Louis Arena, Detroit.
All right. Takes about 5 good seconds for them. All right. Let's see.
Come on, people.
Creatures of the Night.
That's
Nice.
good.
That would be pretty cool.
Good guess.
Yeah.
All right, kids, bring it.
Come on.
That could be their opening song, right? They come out, we're creatures of the night.
I don't think this is the night that they get stumped.
No, William.
True.
The Rothschilds. Oh, I see it.
Ding, ding,
Ronald.
ding.
He did it. He got it. All right, Ronald, you did it, dude.
Just ahead of No Man's Land.
No Man's Land was right behind him. All
Wow.
right. Yes, not
Alex
Motley.
I'm going to officiate your wedding for you.
All right. So, Ronald, send me your name and address, and I'll send you out a prize pack. I don't know. Has Ronald won here before, Ed?
If he has, it was a long time ago.
Ronald, send me your stats, bro. thanks for playing. I'm gonna send you all of our stuff, the HALENVILLE live picks, Ed's guitar pick, mine, the show me your picks. We'll hook you up, bro.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude.
Send you a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Right on. All right, that was quick.
Yeah. Not bad.
Normally we have to ponder them a second, Martin. But Ronald got that one right off the bat. Right off the bat. All right.
Hi, Shane. Shane T. Neal. I haven't seen that name before. How are you?
Shane, welcome, man. Good to see you. So, what is your take, Martin? And I don't, not to turn a corner, but all these albums that we're talking about, and I've heard you talk on the internet about a lot of albums, and I love you and Pete when you do. But what are you a GNR fan, and what's your take on Appetite for Destruction, that debut album?
Yeah, I absolutely am. The funny thing about that album, though, is I've always sort of said that it's a great album. I remember when it came out, I thought it was a great album. But is it like double diamond to uncertified for these 20 albums? Great. Is it like so absolutely classic and massive and genius that it should be, 30 million copies worldwide or whatever it is? Versus all these bands that sold, even 200,000 or 100,000 or 50,000. Like there are albums that are almost as good as Appetite that didn't even certify, right? So that was a funny thing. I remember it came out and we thought, this is a really great album. Very cool. Let's move on. What's the next good album, right? So it was just there, right? It didn't feel like legendary classic, although, the buzz built up. And then I remember feeling more excited actually for both Use Your Illusion 1 and Use Your Illusion 2. And the funny story in Toronto here was that, everybody was ready for that album to come out. And when it was out, the super fans went downtown that day. And the two main stores had a dueling thing. One had buy one of them, get the other one free. And the other one had buy one and you can get a Guns N' Roses t-shirt with. Right? So
a bunch of record stores.
I bought the buy one get one free, right? So that was cool having that come out. The other thing that annoys me when people put down Guns N' Roses and say they have, they're living off of that one album or whatever. When you add it up, they've actually made quite a bit of music over the years, right? Because both Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I mean, compared to Van Halen, and compared to anybody, that's 3 records there. Not 2. Compared to Van Halen, it's 4 records, right? And then they've got the original EP, which gets expanded into GNR Lives. They've got Appetite. They've got a covers album. They've had little dribs and drabs along the way. Chinese Democracy is actually pretty darn good. It's a pretty good album. And a few other new songs along the way. So they actually have put out an appreciable amount of music over the years. I know it's not a lot. But, you got to give them credit. And those guys are in it for the right reasons, too. They're just such crazy music fans, right? They love music, those guys, right? So, and that's why Axl, he's such a perfectionist. That's why it takes him forever to do anything, right? Because he's really trying hard. It's not because he's lazy. It's because he's like too obsessed with
right.
the greatest album of all time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, those guys, since they came back in 2016, they have absolutely killed it. This is a grand ending to their career, I think, and I'm a huge GNR fan, but I love what they've done since they've come back and hit the road. They've been on the road nonstop since 2016.
Yeah, good job, and Axl is singing great. He's got he's still got that really, magnetic stage presence. And then he really, went up in a lot of people's reputation and esteem by his stint with AC/DC as well, right? That was really cool and well respected, and he did a good job, right?
Yeah.
Even in the cast.
Yeah.
So who is? I know you've spoken to Paul McCartney. So I don't know if this question is a good question, but who is on your bucket list to interview?
Oh, many, and I've kind of given up trying. I don't even really think about it. Oh man, Pete Townsend, Roger Waters, Jimmy Page. There's a lot of them, right? Brian May. Those would probably be some of the biggest. Boy, I don't know. Kate Bush, that would be pretty amazing. Axel would be amazing. Yeah, I've talked to Duff and Slash a few times, and who else? Talked to all the Metallica guys. Yeah, those would be the big ones.
Okay.
Yeah, Roger Waters would be really interesting, right? He'd be an interesting guy to talk to, that's for sure.
Do you have anything in the works right now that you can talk about, or?
Just these panel books. I'm working on one on Rainbow that I'm right up against a deadline to get finished. But then I've got half done. I've got two of these panel books on the early days of Genesis and the later days of Genesis, and I've got the Judas Priest album by album coming out, and a couple more probably that I can't talk about. Oh yeah, the other big one that's about to come out is Hallowed Be Thy Name, the Iron Maiden Bible. 666 pages, full color throughout, large format, massive book, something like 350,000 words. So that's coming out as well. So that's a big one. Yeah.
That's awesome. 666 pages.
Busy man.
Yeah.
You are busy, Martin. My goodness. Wow. Me and Ed got his copy like a day or two before me, and he sat there and dangled it like a steak to a hungry dog, Martin.
Yeah, Tony's like, show me, let me see. Oh, I said, okay, you're gonna get yours soon. Don't worry. But yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I love your insights and your take on a lot of these.
I didn't. It's not a fluff piece. I mean, I didn't pull punches. I got to review things, right? My opinion is all throughout that thing, so that it's got some humanity to it. It's not. It
absolutely.
Looks, but the writing is. The writing is definitely coming from a place of a typical complaining, passionate, love 'em, hate 'em Van Halen fan, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
A lot of those around, that's for sure.
We love this book, so thank you again for it.
Yeah, that's great.
No Thanks for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
This has been. Let me put this down. Before we wind down, let me remind the kids. So the broadcast tonight is brought to you and us by Legend Picks. If you want custom guitar picks, there is a link down below. Legend Picks has made guitar picks for all of these folks and all of us folks and can make them for you as well. Greg at Legend Picks, hit him up. You'll find the links in all these shows here on the channel. All right. So upcoming on Saturday night, we do talk Van Halen here every single Tuesday. We'll be back talking Van Halen next Tuesday, but on Saturday, we talk guitar picks and rock memorabilia. We call it Show Me Your Pick. And this week, we are spotlighting and showing you a bunch of stuff from the bass man himself, from Rat, Juan Crochet. And that'll be Saturday, June 29th, 9 p.m. That's this Saturday. And you see how that looks up in the upper right, Ed?
Yeah, I see what you're saying with the flame. Yeah, with the the lighter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It only goes well with the black background. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like that. But do join us as we talk a whole lot of Rat and Roll on Saturday night upcoming. And you know me, I'm a huge Rat fan. So we will be getting on our rat this Saturday. All right. So Martin, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Thank you for this book that we absolutely love. It's been a pleasure meeting you, sir. We've loved your works for many years. It's an honor to have you here tonight and interview you and look at this book with you. So thank you for that. Everyone, give it up, Martin Popoff, right there. All right. Thank you, Martin.
Right.
Everyone,
Guys.
leave a thumbs up here on the video on your way out, and leave some love, leave some good comments in the chat over on your way out.
Get the book.
Get the book, martinpopoff.com, or go to the Van Halen store. It'll be at your doorstep quickly, and it's lovely. It is absolutely lovely. All right. Martin, thank you again, sir.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Alrighty.
Bye now.
See ya.